And thank you for those who are joining us today. I'm very grateful and excited to have Lora and Mitch join us today to share about their life and ministry in Nepal. So let us begin. As we join this online gathering today from many different places, we acknowledge the importance of the land, the spiritual and cultural centrality of it to First Peoples who have stewarded for millennia, and the ongoing care that First Nations, Inuit, and Métis have shown and continue to show for the land. Much of the land is also bound with treaties. I'm working from the national office today and acknowledge that I am on the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee nations. These lands are part of the Toronto Purchase Treaty number 13, signed in 1805, which is held by the Mississaugas of the First Credit First Nation, and the Williams Treaties, signed in 1923 by representatives of the Crown, Ontario, 3 Chippewa nations, now known as the Chippewa Tri-Council, which includes the Chippewas of Beausoleil First Nation on Christian Island, the Chippewas of Georgina Island on Georgina Island, and the Chippewas of Rama First Nation, as well as 4 Mississaugas First Nations, the Mississaugas of Otterville, Curve Lake, Hiawatha, and Scugog Island. The land I'm speaking from is also part of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum, an agreement between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee nations to share the land and its resources. I acknowledge the ongoing significance of these treaties for all people living on the land today. As a church, we acknowledge the sacred connection between the Indigenous peoples who lived and continue to live on the land, and whose practices, spiritualities, laws, and traditions continue to be in relationship with it. I invite you to take a moment and call to mind on whose traditional territory you are in at this moment. What, if any, treaties hold the land where you are, and the importance they continue to have for all that takes place on the land where you live, work, worship, and rest today. So thank you once again. I'll start with introducing Lora and Mitch. Reverend Lora Nafziger and Mitch Rhodes have been living in Nepal since January 2024 with their 2 younger children, Ira and Augie. Jointly appointed by the Mennonite Mission Network and the Presbyterian Church in Canada, Lora serves as staff care and counseling advisor working with a long-standing PCC partner, the United Mission to Nepal. UMN has over 500 staff. Most are Nepali. Approximately 44 are expat staff who work as medical professionals and advisory staff for projects. Lora provides spiritual care and emotional support to these expat staff and their families when they are making the initial transition to life in Nepal, and once they have arrived, continues to offer pastoral and mental health care and support. Lora meets individually with Expatriate and national Nepali staff for counseling and spiritual direction, plans retreats, offers hospitality in her home, provides resources, and supports people in times of crisis or major discernment. Mitch, supported by Mennonite Mission Network, serves as UMN's Expatriate Coordinator. He is responsible for the recruitment of UMN's expatriate appointees, including assisting with visa applications, the language and orientation program, and is the contact person for appointees and their sending agencies with UMN. Lora and Augie have been in Canada since late April, visiting congregations in BC, Ontario, and the Atlantic provinces. Mitch and Ira arrived in June and joined Lora at this year's General Assembly for 1 day. So we are delighted to have Lora and Mitch join us today from Collingwood. Before I turn it over to Lora and Mitch, I want to share some information about PCC's partnership with the United Mission to Nepal. is a faith-based international NGO that strives to help all Nepalis achieve a fuller life through medical and community development programs. It is an ecumenical organization that has worked in Nepal since 1954. In its early years, UMN worked in infrastructure development, including the building of schools, primary, secondary, and vocational, hospitals, and hydroelectric projects. These days, the work of UMN is done through 2 hospitals, Okladunga Community Hospital and Tenzin Mission Hospital, and 3 provincial cluster offices that work with local partners and churches to implement community-based development projects. PCC's partnership with UMN began in 1974. Since then, over 20 mission staff have served in Nepal. In addition to Lora and Mitch, funds from Presbyterian Sharing support Jerry Kent, who has been serving as UMN's funding manager since 2025. PCC also supports UMN with grants, with funds from Presbyterian Sharing, in partnership with Asia CMS, Church of Scotland, and the Presbyterian Church in Ireland. PCC has been supporting Dana Lama, the first Nepali executive director of UMN since 2021. We recently signed an agreement with UMN to support a project which aims to combat gender-based violence, child marriage, and dowry practices by empowering local communities and key stakeholders in Hanumananga Kanalini municipality. Thank you. So today, Lora and Mitch will give an overview of their work and some of the great work UMN is doing in hospitals and through farming projects. Now, over to you, Lora and Mitch.
Thank you so much. Mitch is going to he just got a message as Lily was talking that our most recent UMN appointee has just landed in Kathmandu. So that's really exciting. We keep working even though we're
in Istanbul.
in Istanbul.
She's got a layover in Istanbul.
She's on her way.
Anyway, I'm just now turning off WhatsApp, so any more notifications won't ding for you. I don't know if you all heard that ding that we just got.
So we have continued to work a little bit while we're home doing deputation as well. And Lily, the new place where they're doing the project, even the Nepalis just call it HKM. So there's no worries about pronouncing the whole name or anything like that. So we're really glad to be here with you. And as Grace said at the beginning, we're kind of a small group. So this can be pretty informal. If you wish, please put up your hand if at any point you have a question. Your digital hand, because I don't think we can see your
Yeah, I don't know
hand.
if we'll see that once we start sharing. Will we see that?
I don't know. Grace will see it and she can interrupt us.
Just unmute yourself and start yelling at us until we pay attention.
I should say that the raise hand button is under reactions. If you click on reactions, you can raise your hand that way, or I'll keep an eye on all of you, and if you physically raise your hand, I can interrupt and do it that way too.
Yeah, we're glad to to have some conversation in the next hour about our work at UMN and our work in Nepal. So we're going to start by sharing our screen. Just a second. We have to get this first. We have just a few pictures to show you to help orient you to where we are. If you were at General Assembly, some of these will be familiar, and hopefully some of them also will be new. So, and sound is on. No, it's this one. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Does that look good to people?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
I see some thumbs up. Yeah. So like we've been introduced many times, but I'll just also add, Lora and I are so grateful to be here this afternoon. What you're seeing now is a picture of our whole family. We have 4 boys. So you can see me on the far left in the green jacket, and then Lora is the second from the right. And you also see our 2 older sons who don't live with us because they're in Canada, and our 2 younger sons. Let me just say, starting from the far right, Theo with the glasses, who some people say is a spitting image of me. Theo is our oldest. He's 23, I think. And he just finished his undergrad degree in computer engineering at the University of British Columbia, living in Vancouver. He's found work there, so he'll be there for the next while. Then moving over to right beside me, the second from the left is Adam. He's in the red sweatshirt with the long hair. Adam is just going to be starting his 3rd year at Conrad Grebel, part of the University of Waterloo in Waterloo, Ontario. both of our older boys decided to study in Canada, even though we had been living in the US before we moved to Nepal, but they all have Canadian citizenship. I am the only one in the family who is only American. The others are all dual American and Canadians. So yeah, Adam is at the University of Waterloo in Ontario. And then the other, the one right in the middle, the young man in the navy blue t-shirt, that's Ira. He just turned 16 a couple weeks ago. He lives with us in Kathmandu. And then the youngest of our four boys is Augie. He's also got long blonde hair. He's right in front of Laura there in that picture. He is 10 years old. And so Ira and Augie both live with us in Kathmandu. And they attend the British school Kathmandu, which I think we might talk about a little bit later. But that's our whole family, but it's only four of us who are in Nepal.
Yeah. So this is the four of us who are in Nepal, in a picture of us in Nepal, jumping high after we went on a hike, a multi-day trek close to the Eastern hospital that United Mission to Nepal works with. So Mitch and my job includes visiting two hospitals approximately twice a year because there are a lot of medical staff who are international staff, and our support is primarily for the international staff of UMN. There are currently 46 visa positions, nope, 26 visa positions, and 21 adults and children who support those 46 visa positions, so maybe spouses or children. And so they are mostly in two hospitals, and the third group of people are in Kathmandu, which is where we're based. So we'll show you a map where we go to both places. But this jumping picture is in the mountains near Okhaldunga Community Hospital. The boys attend a British school, and as Mitch said, they are going into grade 5 and grade 11, and they love school, and especially that they get to spend time outside and in the mountains in school. Yeah.
Oh, and can I say just one thing about
Mhm.
this particular area that we're hiking in, trekking in? They call it a trek if it's like a multi-day hike where you stay overnight in little guest houses or tea houses and hike during the day from tea house to tea house. So we were on this trek, and in behind us, the mountains do not include Mount Everest. But if we were to scroll over well, if you were in real time and you looked over toward your right, then you would definitely see Mount Everest because it's very close to where we're hiking in this picture.
So, as Lily said, I'm jointly appointed through the Presbyterian Church in Canada and Mennonite Mission Network, and Mitch is appointed through Mennonite Mission Network. UMN currently has 36 supporting partners from all different denominations and from all around the world. This is from our General Assembly, which happens on a regular basis, and the supporting partners are all invited to send staff and people to give input on the direction of UMN. And so this shows just like all the different supporting partners, but we're just pointing at our two. So.
So, in case anyone needs a refresher of where Nepal is in the world, you can see China in the yellow, India in the orange, and Nepal is that maybe magenta color, kind of right sandwiched in between. Nepalis often speak of themselves as I think they talk about the little one that's in between the dragon to the north and the tiger to the south, because they are definitely sandwiched there between two superpowers in the region. Um, and the south end of Nepal that borders India, well, actually, the India is bordering Nepal on Nepal's east and west and south. Anyway, it's the south region is more jungly and flat. But then as you go further north towards China, which is the Tibetan autonomous region in China, of course, that's where you get the Himalayas, the mountains.
Mhm. Kathmandu itself is only about as high as Banff. It's 1,400 meters. So it's not as high as lots of people think. It's in a valley. UMN was formed, as Lily said. I think, Lily, you have all of my notes, so I don't need to repeat any of them, but I will just say was formed in 1954. And it was founded by 8 founding partners, but today is a kind of a consortium of member bodies of churches and other nonprofits and international groups that support UMN. And this is our, what do you call it? Our mission statement, which is based on John 10:10, fullness of life for all in a transformed Nepali society. And this is really the basis under which all of the work that UMN does is this. This is a current map of our current working locations. And the new project that the Presbyterian Church that Lily was talking about, that PCC is supporting, is in the green region close to India. It's in the one that's furthest to the east in Saptari, but the one that's also in Green Bara. Those are both new working projects. So we haven't before worked in this region. So we've moved from 3 provinces that we're working in, 3 provinces for development projects to 4 provinces, but there's not a provincial office there yet. They're still based out of Kathmandu until all of the projects get up and running. So you can see in the far west, we have projects in Bajang and Doti, and then in the green projects in Mugu and Surkhet as we're moving east, and then Rukam East, Kapilvastu, Nawalparasi, and the United Mission Hospital are all in Lumbini province. Then in the middle in orange, that's Bagmati province, and that's where the main office is. That's Kathmandu, and that's where we live and work. Then the green that I mentioned, and then in the far eastern province, Koshi, is where the Okaldunga Community Hospital is. So there are staff of UMN in all of these offices. The international staff that we work with are in the 2 community hospitals and in Kathmandu. And some of them are advisor positions, and they go out and visit these other projects for their work. The new project that PCC is doing is very similar to a project that's been going on for more than 8 years in the far west, though the context is different because the Madhesh province is much more urban than the other. And so it's the placement is a little bit different, but the project itself is quite similar. We'll talk a little more.
So this is a view of the United Mission Hospital Tan Sen. It was actually the first project that UMN started when it was formed in 1954. It started just as a little clinic, but now it's an acute care hospital it has about 170 beds. It functions at the level of a referral hospital, and it serves patients with a catchment area of almost 1 million people. And yeah, we have approximately 25 to 30, depending on who's exactly there at which time, of our international staff who are based in Tan Sen. It's definitely the biggest of the 3 areas, as Lora mentioned, the 2 hospitals and Kathmandu, those 3 areas. Tan Sen has the largest group of the expatriate staff that we both support.
So we'd like to show you a little video that is a tour of the Tan Sen Hospital. It was made by one of the international staff from Sweden. And so it's a nice little walkthrough of the hospital. We think.
Counselling Mission Hospitalमा स्वागत छ।
आइसक्यो पाटन हस्पिटल जान्यो रिपोर्ट तयार भयो
त्यो चाहिँ 4 दिन हुन्छ है
कति राम्रो काम गर्नुहुन्छ
normal vaginal delivery. She actually had seen was hurt.
Yeah, so this is all right, that was Tansen Hospital. And now we're looking at a picture of the Okhaldunga Community Hospital, which is in the east, closer to Everest. Where did our notes go?
Mary. The Okhaldunga Community Hospital is a primary care hospital that has 50 inpatient beds. It hopes to expand toward 100 beds. It also has a community-based rehab program and used to have a nursing school of health science and is hoping to have that again. It had to close it because the government made a rule that only 100-bed hospitals can host nursing school health science schools. And so that's one of the reasons they're hoping to get back to 100 beds is because the school was quite useful in that area. The hospital is a referral center for Okhaldunga District, which is just like Mitch said, due south of Mount Everest, and draws people from a population of about 250,000 people. You can see all of the solar panels on the roof. The hospital has the capacity to operate or to function offline if it needs to. It makes its own oxygen. It has a long-term complicated tuberculosis ward. That is, in fact, this green building you see in the front right of your screen. And that's close to where we were jumping in the mountains. So we want to just talk a little bit about the new project that UMN is doing and how UMN makes decisions. So you'll see here on the left of your screen this picture, circle picture with life of poverty in the middle. And then around the outside are 6 areas that we think describe what leads to a life of poverty, because poverty is not just about not having enough money, but it's about experiencing despair and oppression and injustice and inequity, conflict, shame and disrespect, ill health and vulnerability, and environmental degradation. Nepal is really impacted by climate change. By some measures, it's the 4th most vulnerable to climate disasters because of the melting of the glaciers, the increase in flooding, and also some of that is human inflicted because of the lack of urban planning and in the city right now, Kathmandu is totally flooding in the monsoon because so much of it has been paved over. So that kind of poor infrastructure development. And when we go to do a new project in a new area, like these ones in the southeast area of Nepal. We work with a community that has invited us in, and then and in areas that the government has identified as needing more resources. So then what UMN does with its local partners, local Nepali only non-governmental organizations, we work to do surveys of the region and figure out what it is that people want to work at. So what it is that is a challenge right now. So that's how we come to this project that the PCC is supporting, to work at what we call harmful traditional practices, which are things that lead to child marriage and gender-based violence, and often also lead to lack of livelihood and well-being and security. And so the team actually does this really interesting thing. I wish I should get a slide from Catherine that like plots on this web where each of these areas are intersecting in that community, and then comes up with projects together. And all of the projects are long term. They're usually in 3 phases, and often the phases are 3 to 5 years. So that's kind of at a minimum 9 years and up to 15 years for a project. And along the way, they begin each time they are kind of pivoting. Mitch is going to tell you a little bit about a project that he was visiting and the way that they were discussing what they wanted to do next. Yeah, just you can tell about that.
Oh, do we have the picture for it?
No.
Oh,
Well,
can I wait to talk about that till later then?
okay, when we have the next picture.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a picture of a traditional project, livelihood project that is a tomato growing project in a lot of the urban and rural areas. There's a need for new kinds of gardening and farming because of climate change. And so that might be introducing people to hothouses and greenhouses. It might be introducing citrus growing or strawberry planting. Strawberries higher up in the mountains where it's cooler, citrus lower down where it's suddenly warmer, so that people have some projects. When we did the visiting tour that Grace and Lily were part of last fall, and we're hoping to do another one in 27, we visited a project that was doing a lot of farming projects, and also they were connecting with a wider economic development project to sell French fries to North America. And I always like to give an example, especially to North American farmers, that the French fry farm is a co-op project with 35,000 farmers. That's how small their plots of land are, because they're all giving their potatoes. But if there's 35,000 farmers, you can imagine they don't even each have an acre of land or something like that. They're doing such a small project.
Actually, I thought Laura had gotten the numbers wrong, or the person that works with UMN in this project had gotten the numbers wrong, because I said there's no way that's 35,000. So we looked it up this morning, and indeed, this project is indeed supporting 35,000 farmers.
Yeah.
So another thing to add too, it seems like a lot of these projects have to do with farming and rural folks, but it's important to know that in Nepal, the number one economic like the thing that most people get their living from is subsistence agriculture. And here you can see a very typical farm nestled in the hillside, where they have terraces. This, of course, would be this is obviously in the hills, which is why they have terraces. There are also many farmers who live on the southern plains, as I mentioned, that border India and where it's more jungly and flat. But there are so many people of these subsistence farmers who live in the hills. And so, like, there's just all sorts of ways that these farmers need to be helped, especially with climate change, because if you've got more rain coming than usual, then it's harder to maintain the terraces, because monsoon downpours that are more frequent and sometimes drop more rain more quickly than have in the past, they do a lot of damage to the terraces. And another problem is sometimes they don't have enough rain, and so then the terraces dry up. Um, and one thing that UMN projects do very often is to get like retention ponds built or like cisterns to catch that rainwater when it comes and save it for the drier times. I'll also mention if we're talking about the farming, you might wonder what crops. Well, the number one crop, of course, is rice. Nepalis eat a lot of rice in their diet. Their main dish is called dal bhat, and that actually means rice and lentils. Um, and so that's why rice is really important. So they of course also grow lentils, but they also have a lot of corn. Then wheat comes next, and they also grow millet, barley, potatoes, and then lots and lots of different kinds of vegetables. Um,
And I want to just make sure that I'm clarifying that this French fry farm that has 35,000 farmers is not a UMN project. We're not making a French fry factory, but many of the farmers who participate in the livelihood projects of UMN so that they have extra potatoes, say, to sell their potatoes to that French fry factory. So I did want to just clarify that we're not running the factory. And one of the most important ways that these livelihood projects intermingle with a project that is about like gender-based violence or reducing child marriage is that when young women enter early childhood marriages, then the rates of gender-based violence are higher, and also their chances at finishing school and having their own work and livelihoods are decreased. And so we end up with and education and farm projects and livelihood projects tied in with those. So that's how we had that circle on the other side of all of the intersecting areas.
I just want to add too that one important thing to understand about Nepali traditional culture is when there is a marriage, the bride always enters the household of the groom's family. So if that girl is very young, there's much more chance that she can't stick up for herself in this new family, and it's easier for her in-laws to pick on her, to treat her like a slave if she's very young. However, if she's much older when she comes into that new household as a bride, the chances decrease for that ill treatment to happen.
Yeah. Here's another picture from the hills in the far west region, and that Mitch visited. And here's the women's group that he'll talk a little bit about.
Okay, yeah. So I took a lot of these pictures that are coming up next and the ones you just saw previously when I went on a visit to some of our projects in the far west in the Doti province. It's about a 45-minute plane ride from Kathmandu over to a place called Dangari. And then to get to this place, it was about 8, 9 hour drive to get to this particular farming village. So this is a group of farmers. They are women. The men you see sitting around the circle would be the project coordinators. Some of my colleagues from UMN are also with me in this picture. This particular village and surrounding communities that would meet together for this women's farming group, they felt very proud that they were in this group. And at some point, I was told by my colleagues that at some point they decided to all get these green saris that they would wear to all of their meetings like this. And this was a chance for me to see what happens in some of these rural projects that UMN does, even though it's not my usual work. Like Lily has said and Laura said, we're working with the expatriate staff who come in, and most of them are in the hospitals. And this is not my usual work, but it was good for me to see what goes on. So the interesting thing about these kind of meetings, when the staff from the local projects and the staff from UMN come, they're often seeing like what is the result of the different projects that UMN's been doing, and what would these farmers like to see happen next. And the projects that UMN does are kind of coming organically from the farmers and from the community people themselves. It's not like UMN has these ideas and said, let's do this idea here and let's do it there and there. They don't do that without talking to the community members first. So I think that's something that sets apart the way that UMN works from other organizations, such as USAID, that we know have these huge projects and are kind of more like cookie cutter things. And yeah, I think that's something that I'm proud of the way that UMN works, and that it's kind of coming from the bottom up. The ideas that the people say will be helpful for them. And this was also my trip. This was a different group. They were showing off their cistern to collect the rainwater that they had built with the help of United Mission to Nepal.
And again, I just want to point out that these are all women farming groups, and they're coming from those small communities.
Oh, yeah, and maybe something to mention about that is one of the reasons there are so many women farmers is because so many of the men of working age are working abroad. How many people are sent outside the country every year?
Well, it's 1 in 3 families has somebody outside the country who is currently living there. And currently, we know that the numbers in the Middle East of non-immigrants, like of just what we might call like seasonal workers or something, is about the population of Nepal is a little over 30 million, and it's about 10% of Nepal population. So close to 3 million people are currently working in the Middle East as like temporary workers, but with intention to come back. So that's not counting any of the people who've immigrated or are out for school or that kind of thing. But there's just an enormous amount. And so that estimate of immigrants and school people and people who are working abroad in various areas is about 30% of working age people. And right now we know that the GDP of Nepal is a little more than 30, and in the last measure of the half of the fiscal year was almost 50%, which is really high for all remittances being sent back in. So the GDP is highly supported by Nepalis outside of Nepal. The last picture we wanted to show for now is just our kids like to watch goat parades. Call them goat parade, but they're always just groups of people with goats walking through the street and bringing their goats. And these are, again, animal projects where you're giving an animal to help with a livelihood project. We'd like to stop there. Is that okay? And open for questions. And I'm going to, should I stop screen sharing?
Yeah.
And then we can share again if we need to. Yeah.
Thanks for that presentation. It was great to hear you talk about all of your work. Maybe I'll ask if Lily has a question to start with, and anyone else can think of a question that they have and raise your hand either physically or use the raise hand function under reactions, and I can call on you to unmute when you're ready, or unmute and go ahead. So Lily, why don't you start us off?
Thank you, Grace. And yeah, thank you, Laura and Mitch, for that. I actually learned more things as I was listening to you guys. And it was great to see some of the places that we visited. And talking about those goats, I went trekking after, and it wasn't goats, but donkeys. I almost got knocked off. It was actually quite scary. They're just coming down those steps. I think actually 3 things maybe while people are thinking about it. First, maybe presence of Christians in Nepal, maybe the percentage, and just a little bit about Christianity in Nepal. Second, I really like the point that you made about Mitch, about how the projects are identified from the people. So it's grassroots and up. And I remember in one of your blogs, you mentioned something that I think it was a European NGO. They sent something and it was just sitting there because that's not what they needed, but they thought they needed that. So if you want to just share a little bit, I thought that was very interesting. And the third is about cows and cheese. If you could just maybe, because that's, I think, very interesting. And and why it's hard to get cheese there, but also, like cows, how important it is in Nepal, and the taboos or things like that, right? Unclean, clean. I think that'd be kind of interesting for people to learn about. So three
Sure.
things.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
I just have to move a little bit.
Yeah, our laptop is weird. It follows us around with our camera. So, I can talk about that story, Lily, first. Yeah, that happened in my visit to Doti. That you saw some pictures of when I was out in Doti, and one of the villages we visited, like you mentioned, we had our meeting where they all sat in a circle and they talked about the current projects and what they wished for next. But this whole time, kind of off to the side, there was this huge loom that had some beautiful cloth on it that they were in the middle of weaving. And I knew enough Nepali to understand that they had not talked about that loom at all. So I was curious, and after the meeting, I asked the story about the loom there, and then one of the women said that loom came from, yeah, you're right, another non-government organization from outside Nepal. These people came and said, "Hey, we're going to teach you how to weave cloth." And here's how you do it. And here's some nice big looms to help you get started. And then you can sell that cloth in the market. And so these women, they learned how to weave and they did the project. But then, because it was not there was actually no market for this cloth, people did not buy that cloth like the outsiders thought would happen. And so that loom has just been sitting there ever since, not being used. And yeah, like you said, I thought that was a really good contrast to how UMN organizes its projects.
Um, and I'm going to talk about cows and then I'll come back to Christians because I think the cow piece works well with the farmers. So some of the projects that have to do with dairy production are really appealing to the Nepali government because there's not much of dairy production in Nepal. Because cows are considered sacred. And so you have to be very careful with your cow. And in Nepal, there is a caste system in some areas in Nepal. It's different than the caste system in India. It wasn't put into law in the same way that the British did in India. Nepal was not colonized by the British, but there is in various parts of Nepal a caste system, so a hierarchy system that is related to Hindu traditions and cultures. But some parts of Nepal don't have that. So it's a bit confusing. But in all of the cultural groups in Nepal, there is a sense of people who are in our community and out of our community. And some of those people are considered maybe in biblical language, we'd say clean and unclean. There are people who are acceptable to the community and people who aren't. And so sometimes that means in some traditional areas that a person who is unclean or is not of your same social status is not able to drink milk from your cow, because if they did, that would make your cow unclean like that person. Similarly, if that unclean or lower social status person sold me milk, it might be detrimental for me to drink it because I might then become at a lower social class status like that person. So that makes the dairy industry pretty complicated. So some of the most interesting projects are having people bring their extra milk and put it into a collective dairy, which, we're mixing clean and unclean, potentially, and but then they get paid for it. And so it's in the government's interest to have the dairy happening. It's in people's interest to get money for the dairy that they bring in. And it's breaking down some of those, again, what we would call harmful traditional practices. And we can think of things in our Christian tradition that we could have said comes out of Christian practices that are harmful traditional practices. And recently, some of our Hindu colleagues did a study of the ways that the Hindu scriptures are being used to perpetuate harmful traditional practices. And they would say in a way that's not that's not in line with what the Hindu scriptures also say. So that brings me to Christians in Nepal, which is to say that Christians are definitely the minority in Nepal. The government counts Christianity at about 3%. People who know say it's closer to 10 or 12%. Historically, Christians in Nepal have had a history of persecution, of not being able to convert. You had to convert in secrecy, that kind of thing. These days, the government of Nepal in its constitution from 2015 said it's a secular state and anyone can practice their tradition. At Easter this year, there was a gathering of, I think they counted like 10,000 Christians in the stadium in Kathmandu, which was really exciting. Christianity was brought to Nepal by Nepali Christians who became Christian in India mostly. So then the border between India and Nepal was drawn and then closed. And that's like a long history, but many people who were outside of that Nepal were now in India. They still spoke Nepali. They still understood themselves to be Nepali. And they became Christian due to the influence of Christian missionaries in India mostly. And they waited at the border of Nepal and India for Nepal to open up. They prayed for that to open so they could return to their communities and their families and tell people about the faith that they had come to know.
And when was it open?
And it was open, sorry, in 1954. The border was closed for 116 years. And so Nepal, the Nepali Christian Church is an indigenous Christian church. It grew out of Nepalis spreading the gospel to other Nepalis. There certainly have been Christians alongside them, actually through United Mission to Nepal and PCC's other partner through PWS&D is called INF. Both of those ecumenical Christian organizations offered a lot of support to the Christian church, and we continue to worship alongside and support them, though both of our organizations are development organizations, and so we cannot, according to our visas, do any church planting or proselytization, though I think that's best done by Nepalis anyway, and I'm glad to support them in the work that they're doing. So the Nepali Christian Church is considered one of the fastest growing Christian churches in the world. And so I hope that answers that question. I'm glad to say more about any of those things, but to hear other people's questions too is great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you answered everything. And let's wait to see if anybody else has any questions here.
No, would anyone else like to unmute and ask a question of Lora and Mitch?
Yeah, if nobody does.
Hi, Debbie. Go ahead.
Hi. Hi, Laura. Do you remember me? I was with Sarah Kim and Janet and
Yes, you did.
2 years ago in Nepal.
Yeah.
Nice to see you.
We spent most of our time with INF, but we had a great time with you and Mitch and exploring Kathmandu. Is it illegal in Nepal to proselytize? So like your organization can't actually go out and preach the word, so to speak, but they do their Christian witness through the work that they do and that kind of thing. Is it actually illegal?
Well, what is illegal is forcible conversion. So that is, that sounds like not a bad idea, to make illegal forcible conversion. What that looks like in practice is that everybody does adult baptism, and that usually if you're going to be baptized, you also have to sign a paper saying this was of my own volition. So that if there is a conversion and maybe a love marriage, sometimes this happens, the family might say they made my child become Christian by falling in love with them and luring them away, or like some kind of thing. Or if there are Christians doing work in Nepal and they are being particularly pushy or doing something that is not in their visa, they can get in trouble for that. So we don't have to hide that we're Christians. We are allowed to, if anyone says, why did you come here? We can say, because I understand that Jesus wants us to work with the poor and the impoverished, and we see that in Nepal, and we're called to work here, and this is out of my Christian faith. We can say that. We can tell anybody about our faith. We can invite anybody to church. I mean, those things are allowed. It's not it's not that we have to be a secret about who we are or why we're there. Everything about UMN and INF is all Christian and it's all on the website and the government knows about it. In my job, I have an MDiv. They know that that's the qualification that's bringing me here.
Masters of Divinity.
Masters of Divinity, that I'm hired by the Presbyterian Church in Canada. Like they know all of those things. And in fact, a number of UMN's local partners, because we distribute money to be implement the projects to be implemented through very local partners. Right now in Rukum, in the middle of the country, I think those local partners, there's 250 churches that are implementing the anti-gender-based violence projects of UMN. They're not nonprofits, they're churches that are actually directly doing that. So how's that?
Yeah, no, great. It's a fine line, but
that's right. That's
right.
right.
What's interesting is like in Nepal, there is this term secret missionaries. There are some people who want to be more forward in what they're doing to proclaim the gospel or to
plant churches.
What some people do is they get a business visa. Let's say they have enough money to open up a cafe or a restaurant, and often they'll give it a name that sounds kind of Christian-y. I can't think of one off the top of my head right now, but you know them when you hear them. And then they have a reason to be in the country, and the government says, okay, yes, you can be part of our economy by having your little business. But then on the side, they might like have a house church or invite people in for Bible study and play Christian music in the background. So they have to be a little bit careful because we have heard of people getting kicked out because they're not doing exactly what they said they would do for their visa.
Right. So if you're running the business and you're playing Christian music and offering a Bible study, that's fine. But if you're not like doing the business, then that's not allowed. It's a fine line, but we don't feel like we're in any way at risk of having of getting in trouble with the government, or that we cannot talk about why we're there or our faith or anything like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think Blair had a question first and then Maria. Is that right? Blair, you can shake your head if that's wrong. Okay, great.
So many questions, Grace. So many questions. No, that's not fair. That sounds way more negative or ominous. Thanks for letting me know about Nepal. I do have a lot of questions, but they're just curiosity. I wonder, you mentioned USAID earlier in a comparison, which was not particularly flattering to USAID, which comports with my experience as well. So it's not, but I wonder, there's two parts to the question. One is just how have the cuts at USAID affected your work, and as bad as a top-down project might be, it's still a project. There may still be benefits to that, and whether or not there have been cuts to that. And the second one is, in my mind, related, but not necessarily organically related. On the banner you had at your General Assembly, or the board at your General Assembly, you had, I think that there was a Peace USA symbol that was there. And I wonder whether or not their recent changes have impacted your work at all.
Yeah. First, can I just clarify, first of all, I admire so many things that USAID did and still does in a very smaller capacity. And it was heartbreaking that it was a fed to the wood chipper, like Elon Musk said, unfortunately.
So there's no doubt, but it is a large governmental organization.
Right.
So even people who are, Atul Gawande had just been, dismissed, and like all of his disease efforts.
Exactly.
There are a lot of things that they do right.
So the interesting thing is that UMN was looking for how to get money from USAID. Like, how could we grow a project and replicate it? Because right now we have so many small funders, and then we have to do reporting mechanisms for like all of these funders. And so having some more larger funders could have been nice. Um, but the cuts that we didn't have any USAID money, so did not impact UMN directly, but we do get money from other governments and often through kind of like the way the Canadian government does and gives money and then you give it out. Um, so we do get money from other governments, and then other governments have closed down some giving, and so our money has decreased in that way. Um, but USAID project in Nepal, the main thing that USAID funded was all of the prenatal and immediately postnatal maternal preventative health care in all of Nepal. So that's a massive project that's being rolled out at a massive scale that was massively impactful. And when USAID was cut, all of the government programs of prenatal care and postnatal preventative care were all disappeared because it was entirely funded by USAID. So it was a dramatic and awful, awful impact on Nepal when the money was pulled from USAID. They had some other things going on too, but that was one of the main things. And the government has had to try to figure out how do we fund all of our early, prenatal childcare education. And also, then you asked about PCUSA. So Mitch tries to get people to work for us, and PCUSA is not sending people anymore, only money. And money is also good, but people are also good. So that's the one way that we know that that has shifted around.
Great.
Yeah.
Can I follow up, or like there's not very many of us, so I don't feel like I need to monopolize, but and I'm the one that's never talked to you guys before, so
Yeah, go ahead.
So that kind of the USAID government story kind of twigs into another question that I was thinking about. So today, Christianity Today's email blast, there was a story about, or an opinion piece really, just about, are mission hospitals still desirable, right? Because there are lots of reasons why they're not. They take away from the incentive for publicly funded healthcare. They may deteriorate into sort of luxury hotels. We see this in Nigeria, for instance, different things like hospitals, not hotels. And so they're, I just wonder what your sense is about your hospitals and how that functions within the public system, and is there a private system that's also going on? Like how does this fit as something that is long term a good idea? I'm not assuming that it doesn't. At the end of the piece in Christianity Today, it says no, we still need them for various reasons. So
yeah, no, that's a great question, Blair. So right now UMN is managing 2 hospitals, but in our past we had at one time 5 hospitals. 3 hospitals were given away successfully to the government, who now operates them. And often, if we're like, when we talk to taxi drivers or whoever, and they want to know about our work, and then they ask, well, what's UMN? And then we can say, well, Patan Hospital, which is one of the biggest hospitals in the city. We can say, we started that one like 60 years ago, and now the government's running it. And they'll say, oh, yeah, that's great work. And our intention was also to pass off those 2 remaining hospitals to the government. And we did that about 15 years ago. And then after a while, the government said, we can't make this work. We can't make this hospital run to serve the poor people in these rural areas like you guys do. So please take them back. And so we have them back now. And one thing that a mission hospital can do is we can bring in doctors from overseas who do not cost a penny to the Nepal government, to the taxpayers, because those people are supported by friends from back home. They can bring new training that the Nepali doctors might not have had access to. Everything from laparoscopic surgery to, I don't know, the new way to do C-sections or whatever. Um, and so that's something that is very important to those hospitals that we run.
Yeah. And I would just say in the history of Nepal, a thing that's important to know, I talked about it with Christians, was that Nepal was closed until 1954. So the healthcare system in Nepal did not exist until Christian organizations started the hospitals in Nepal at the behest of the Nepali government to help with that early development. And so there's still consortiums of Christian hospitals in Nepal that work together alongside the public system. There is a private system that's growing up very quickly as well, but that is, people are pretty skeptical of it. Anyway, yeah, it's 102. Grace, you said that Maria, you have your hand up too.
Yeah. Maria, do you
Yeah.
want to ask your question and then we can wrap up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you both. It's good to see you again. Laura and Mitch and their families met me and Sharzad in Nepal. I think twice already we've seen each other, right?
Yeah.
So it's great to hear about the latest updates. So I'm also happy to hear about the DOTI and how the community's voice is being heard. So that kind of locally led development is being talked about in the sector very much, and PWS&D is also trying to give a strong focus on it. So I'm just curious as to how you managed the Gen Z situation back in September for your family and also for the expats that are under your care. And how is the situation right now, the political situation in Nepal right now?
What if I talk about it then and you talk about it now?
Sure.
Yeah. So we were right in Kathmandu where the uprisings were. It was pretty scary. And it turned out that over those weeks, we had a number of our international staff who were from the hospitals happened to be in town. And when they're in town, they all stay in a really pretty close area to where we live, which is why we live there, why we were told to live there. So I actually went and like walked, during the curfew hours when we were allowed to go and visit people and check in on them, make sure they were okay. We have a warden group set up so that we make sure that we can check in for each other for political upheaval, but also for natural disasters and other kinds of things. When we leave town, we let each other know. And we hosted a lot of people in our house for prayer and we played some games and I sent out a virtual prayer service that people could do. So some concrete things. Our kids were lucky enough to have school online. That was not the case for most children in Nepal. And I was really grateful for the support that they had from there. From our rooftop, we could look around and see the burning, especially on the second day when everything kind of went up in smoke. It was amazing how quickly it was ignited, and it was amazing how quickly it stopped. So it was a Monday to Saturday from the time that the first march and protests were, which we knew a number of people who were part of those, until Tuesday when the violence increased and was terrifying. And then Tuesday evening until Saturday when we were kind of under martial law with a curfew. And then on Saturday, the new interim government was announced. And the Nepali military actually negotiated that agreement. The Nepali military is very trusted and did not engage in a coup, did not overthrow the government, did not choose who was going to be it, but helped negotiate for all sides. And part of that outcome was that there would be elections in March, which have taken place and were considered fair and free.
And the new Nepali prime minister, as of March, is this 35-year-old guy named Balen Shah. He's actually a former rapper. In his younger days, he was rapping, and he still does a little bit on the side. But then more recently, he became mayor of Kathmandu, and then he's the one that won in an overwhelming landslide in March. And he's been in office for quite a while, a couple months now, and there are definitely strong opinions about him. So it remains to be seen whether he's going to be good for Nepal or whether he's can't accomplish all that he has set out to.
There has never been a Nepali government that has lasted the 5 years. It's always been a minority government, so it's been overthrown or there's been a non-confidence vote or whatever. But this is the second only majority government in the history of Nepal's democracy experiment, and we'll see if it can last. So you could pray for that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, the both of you, for your time. And thanks to everybody that came out and participated. And Lily, do you have any closing words other than that?
I just wanted to say thank you once again. We just actually put up some links in the chat. There's a link to the mission blog. If you'd like to learn more about what's happening in Nepal, Mitch and Lora are writing all the time. And a lot of the information that they share actually are on that mission blog. And then I think Grace just put up information about partner visits. So if you click on that, we are planning another trip to Nepal in 2027. So if you're interested, please visit that website. So thank you for everyone for visiting today or joining.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Have a good afternoon.